Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Second Wind Podcast. I am your host, Kerry Graves, and it's great to be back in studio recording another session. Today, we're going to have a little discussion about our children and some of the things that can come about when we as parents aren't really good parents. Now, that is obviously in the eye of the beholder because we all parent in different ways. So, one way that you may think that you're disciplining your child in the correct form, that's your way. And what I think is normal might be normal. But there are non negotiables. And those non negotiables stem from child abuse and neglect. So, one of the main things that we're going to talk about today centers around something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And before I go down that road, if you are not for uplifting kids, children and adolescents, teens, ensuring that they have what they need, whether it is their basic needs, school supplies, clothing that are weather and season appropriate, and have every opportunity to try and succeed, then I don't want to hear shit from you. Because you are probably part of the problem. It's interesting, when I first started working at the Department of Social Services in North Carolina, Forsyth County, 2004, there was a child welfare supervisor. And I don't know what was going on that particular day, but I went into her office and then I sat down and we started talking. And one of the first things that came out of her mouth was the fact that she hated kids. Note the key word, hated. She didn't say, I just don't like kids. She said, I hate kids. And she was a child welfare supervisor in charge of child welfare workers that were tasked with investigating child abuse and neglect. And sometimes she would have to fill in and investigate things herself. Yeah, people can still do their jobs, but can they do them without judgment? No. And that is strictly my opinion from experience. Let me take you to another example that is frequently hard for me to process. Not too long ago, I was a clinical instructor at the Jordan Institute for Families and Children's Resource Program, in which I helped co-write trainings and had the great opportunity to help rewrite a state publication, a couple, centered on planning and treatment, foster care. Some of the other things that I was a part of in, helping write and come up with trainings: separation and loss, investigating child sex abuse, child mental health, supervisor's guide to retention and child welfare, a variety of other topics. You want to find those out, go to kerrygraves.com. Yep, shameless plug. You get the point. But in those trainings, over a 2-year period, which was a long 2 years for other reasons, specifically when we were teaching individuals how to conduct sex abuse investigations, along with the intricacies of um, sex abuse and what the victims go through, the grooming process for the perpetrator. We went through it all, the whole gamut. But one of the questions that we would ask, particularly in that course, because not everyone has the mentality, the patience, the stomach to investigate child sex abuse. And that often, that sometimes leads to sex abuse in general, sexual assaults, domestic violence potentially. And in my agency or agencies, if there was a sex abuse case that came across the wire, maybe I was not up to take the next case, to investigate the next case, but they would call me. I digress. So, one of the questions we would always ask is, why are you working at the Department of Social Services in child welfare as an investigator conducting child sex abuse investigations? And everybody, these are some of the responses that we would get, which should scare the shit out of you. Response one: well, I just needed a job, and this is what they're making me do. And these are not made up responses, everybody. I come to you with no fibs. I just needed a job, and here I am. I needed this training. Well, I got to pay my mortgage and my bills, so this was the easiest field to get into right now. And the other thing that should scare you to death: many, if not most, of these individuals were not social workers, no social work degree. So, in turn, and I can only speak for North Carolina at this point, even though I've heard things from other states, but that's secondhand. The Department of Social Services, Department of Health and Human Services in the state of North Carolina, they are putting your children and families at risk because they want to save a buck. What kind of bullshit is that? Ask yourself that question. Well, Carrie, how do you know it's because they wanted to save a buck? I've talked to directors. I have friends that are directors. We have these candid conversations. No, the other directors won't go for it because of their budget. They only get so much to wow. No, we don't want to classify social workers as in North Carolina. We don't want to put them in the classification for the Office of Personnel Management and lock out anybody else from these jobs because we would have to pay them more. There was this fight back in the early to mid 2000s pushing for a classification for all social workers. And the directors of the Departments of Social Services were one of the main groups that shut it down. So how much do they care, really, about your children and families? Well, we can send them to trainings and they'll be fine. How long does that duct tape really last when you put it on something? And don't say forever. Better yet, Scotch tape. The dam breaks. Well, as long as there's no child deaths. I've heard it all, everybody. I've heard it all. I've seen cover ups. I've heard about cover ups. And if you report them, they're swept under the rug. Well, they wouldn't really do that, would they? Oh my goodness. This is where we're going, huh? So when it comes to adverse childhood experiences, and I'm going to get to some statistics in a minute, but let me tell you what it is. Adverse childhood experiences are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood from the ages of 0 to 17. Some examples include experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, witnessing violence in the home or community, having a family member attempt or die by suicide. But it doesn't stop there. Substance abuse issues, parental substance abuse issues, serious parental mental health issues, instability due to parental separation, instability due to household members being in jail or prison, domestic violence, homelessness. All of these things that are happening when a child is between the ages of 0 and 17, and they are potentially traumatic events. A little statistical information, and we can talk about this. ACEs are common and too common. 3 in 4 high school students reported experiencing 1 or more ACEs, and 1 in 5 experienced 4 or more. And the ones that were the most common were emotional abuse, physical abuse, living in a household affected by poor mental health or substance abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, again, what are we doing to our kids? What are we doing to our kids? And with our kids, ACEs can have effects such as PTSD. ACEs can have the effect where our kids experience trauma when they get older, experience mental health issues, substance abuse issues when they get older, domestic violence when they get older, homelessness when they get older, poor health consequences when they get older, from cancer to heart disease. These can all be rooted in experiencing ACEs. And some of the most important statistics, an estimated 64% of United States adults had past exposure to ACEs. And that's on average, with the highest being in Maine, which is 72.5%. And ACEs can reflect the gap in socioeconomic status of U.S. adults. Think about that. Socioeconomic status. You know what that means. And one of the last statistics is going to be children with emotional, mental, or behavioral conditions have experienced higher ACEs from 1.65 to 4.46 times higher than those children without ACEs. But yet, our children still suffer. Things are still been taken away from our children that they require to meet their basic needs. Some of you all might say, well, that's their parents' fault. Some of us had to work to do this, blah, blah. Ladies and gentlemen, get off your high horse. If you want to make that argument when kids turn 18, do that. It's not my fault their parents drank their money away, did the drugs, is out. Not everyone can be born into a good family situation. Anything can happen to any of us at the drop of a dime. But yet, we still want to blame it on not having luck, or it's their fault. ACEs can lead to poor life outcomes for many. Here's the most stunning thing to me is that ACEs are not, well, let me back up. There's such a thing called the ACEs questionnaire, which I believe should be mandated. But in many states, it's only recommended. And the ACEs questionnaire consists of 11 to 15 questions, depending upon where you're at and which version you use. And some of our most trusted, in quotations, agencies don't use the questionnaire. Oh, it's just another tool that'll weigh him down. It's 11 to 15 questions. Yes or no? Are we concerned about children and families, or are we not? Or are you more concerned about doing a whole bunch of talking throughout the day and not really worried about staying on top of your caseloads? That's a fact. Been there, seen it. Mental health. Why isn't everybody asking the ACEs? It should be mandated. Well, I mean, I've just got so much to do. Do you care about your clients or not? Many of you all will say you do, but actions, you know that quote, right? So are we really concerned about the well-being of our children? And when these children grow to be adults, is my main point here. And to introduce you to the terminology ACEs. But the other thing is, why does it seem like we don't really do enough? I've been involved with organizations, agencies that are tasked with promoting the welfare of children and families. Or, APSAC, the American Professional Society Against the Abuse of Children. We hold trainings. I've been a part of putting together trainings, been on panels, spoken at trainings, spoken to groups in communities. But are we really advocating through lobbying efforts? I've been on PAC committees, legislative committees. Are we really fighting for those things? When I say fighting for those things, I don't mean, hey, I think this is something that we need to try to push. I mean, fighting for those things, getting in somebody's face. And I'll admit, in the past, I've been one to say, yeah, let's lobby for those things. Let's push for those things, but not as loud as I should be. That shit has got to stop. It's got to stop. And we have to realize what our purpose really is with the time that we have. Is it to be an asshole? I don't give about them. That's their own fault. That's their own doing. As opposed to promoting, helping, and advocate for children and families. Really advocating for children and families against agencies that are using a mask, per se, to hide what they really do. Like not hiring social workers when social work A should be considered a profession and aligned with the Office of Personnel Management, at least in North Carolina. And if we call it a social work profession, why are we hiring people that worked in a textiles agency? Fucking sense does that make? Let me say this. I know an individual who did work in textiles, and I use that example because it was such a, golly, wide so far away from social work as you can get. That was a pretty good case manager for the Department of Social Services. But that's an anomaly. Why wouldn't you want the best for families, or at least those who've been trained year after year after year after year? Instead of let's send them to a training and hope they get it. You wonder why the turnover is so high at departments of social services? That's one of them. And the other one, yeah, is pay. But one is you're getting people who working at social services is just a stopover until they find something in their actual field and or that pays more. And they're not getting dumped with cases, which is another whole aspect. What do you think about the thought that having crappy social work investigators surrounding child abuse and neglect contributing to a child's ACEs? Think about that for a minute. For example, in Forsyth County, North Carolina, I transferred a case to an individual. The mom was developmentally delayed. She had 3 kids. I got called because mom turned the gas on in the house and left it on. Almost a disaster. I worked with the family. I provided the things that they needed. Family got back on track. Transferred the case to another worker. 3 months after the fact, I see the worker. Hey, how's such and such family doing? This fucking worker says, and I quote, I don't know, I haven't seen them yet. I have over 75 cases on my caseload. I'm trying. Tell me that that doesn't contribute or can contribute for some of you all to a child's ACEs. Having to live in an environment that is detrimental and is put together by scotch tape or duct tape, waiting on the person to come with sheetrock, brick, mortar, but they don't show up for 3 months. There's a problem with the system. And part of the problem with childhood ACEs is that the system is broken and has been broken since 2004, if not sooner. So, how can we ensure that the system gets put back together? We've got to be able to provide more resources. We've got to be able to provide mandates in terms of mandating certain questionnaires, the ACEs questionnaire that can provide a more in-depth snapshot of what's really going on with the family, as opposed to filling out all the time documents that don't hold water. Or workers that seem overwhelmed, firsthand experience, Guilford County DSS. And supervisors who don't give a shit but are on a power trip. Or if a case goes sideways, you're not telling a worker, I'll promote you if you help cover up something that could get us not shut down, put on the state's radar, possibly put on probation, and have the state coming in and looking through all of our files. Alamance County, but we don't want to address those things. We think those things are okay. So how do we get back on the right track? Well, you're going to have to stay tuned and listen to the next episode for that one, because it is full-fledged, guns a-blazing in terms of fixing what needs to be fixed with our child welfare agencies, or at least trying to fix. Back in 2004, well, early 2000s, let's go to the multiple response system. You'll have to look it up if you can't wait for me to talk about it. And with the multiple response system, if I am an investigator or assessor, whatever the hell you want to call it these days, I have to call the family, notify them, because we want to be more family friendly. But that also gives the family time to clean up a mess and then go right back to the way you were. To tell little Timmy, don't say a word, or you'll get an even harder beating. Grandpa, he's living with Aunt Tom right now, but soon as they leave, he's coming right back. And let's admit something. Being a child welfare investigator is a dangerous profession, job. A lot of people don't like when you come knocking on their door, whether it's announced or unannounced. When you call, I got a case, I need to see you. They don't like it. So we've got to get over certain things when it comes to certain organizations and how they do business. A little bit of perception, or safer children and families. Supervisors who actually care, or running the same ones up and down the totem pole. Well, they've been here for 10 years. They deserve it. The 100 counties in North Carolina, 100 DSS directors. Take a guess what they all look like and whether or not the majority are male or female. To me, it's like coaching in a sense. It's the good old boy network. We have to start taking more ownership. We have to start advocating louder. And if you can't do that for children, get the hell out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it from today's episode from the Second Wind Podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, and I will get into the Department of Social Services. We got a few things to talk about. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button. Stop playing. Tell your friends, tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your cousin, your brother, your sister, your uncle. Hit the subscribe button. My episodes are available on all podcast platforms, as well as YouTube. Hit the button today. Stop playing. And I'll see you next time.